Good evening, folks. You may have been in the situation where many find themselves as Christians, where people are asking you questions that you just don't know the answers for, or you don't feel you know the answers for. And a lot of times we let our knowledge base hold us back from sharing our faith, from being open about our faith and our relationship with Christ, because we're afraid of the questions that might come that we don't have the answers for. Well, we want to talk to you about the importance of your testimony and what that actually is, because the Apostle Paul pulls his testimony out in a very tense moment here. And he pulls out the strongest thing he's got to share, which is his story. Now, let's understand something. This is an intellectual man. He is brilliant, actually. Quick mind, well-groomed, trained, critical think. He's just got it all. He's got an amazing package. And here at a most intense moment, he's going to speak to a crowd that wants to literally do him in. They want to kill him. And he gets an opportunity to talk to them. And he talks to them about his testimony. He doesn't seek to dissuade them from their own beliefs. He only tells them his experience with his own and what that is like in his life and what God has done. So guys, tonight we want to talk about testimony. Mm-hmm. Ethan, tell me your testimony.
Oh, wow.
When did you receive Christ?
I wasn't expecting this. Pretty young, yeah.
Pretty young, like last year or what?
Yeah, well, last year around this time. No. Yeah, it would have been when I was quite young, back at the old church, the warehouse church, and my family just started coming to people's around then, and then growing up here. And in the years, I think I believed in God at a very young age, but then it took me a lot of years to understand what I believe, maybe. And that's part of growing up. But yeah, so I couldn't say for sure the exact moment, but it was a life journey for sure through this church, yeah. Okay.
In your testimony, what has been one of the most clearest things that God has spoken to you in all of your years? You just know it was God's voice. He was talking to you and directing you or encouraging you, or what is that?
The clearest voice.
Sorry?
God had to spend a lot of time with me breaking down pride. It was a huge thing in my life. I think it's a generational thing in my family that we've had a lot of pride-based and I mean, even looking at my dad and my uncle, it took them a long time to finally grasp the whole concept of the freeness of believing in Jesus. So, yeah, for myself, same thing. It was just a lifelong kind of letting God take control versus me wanting to take control back until finally you hit enough rock in the hard places till you figure out it's much better if you partner up instead of run away.
That's always not the truth. One more question for you. Okay. When it came to your walk with God, what is the moment that you just knew you felt the reality of God's presence more than at almost any moment? You just have that locked and loaded. That was a moment when I know God's reality was just so present with me.
Oh man, that's a tough one. It shouldn't be, but I think there's just a lot. Actually, if the biggest one for me, and it reminds me of the story of Jacob, how Jacob kept running away, and then finally he's got the hitch in his hip from wrestling with God, and he's stuck in the tent, and his brother's coming, he thinks he's going to get his butt kicked. And actually for me, I fell on a knife when I was in my teen years, and probably in the most prideful version of myself. Didn't necessarily come to church all the time anymore. I was kind of pretty focused on myself, and just that being stuck at home, and you can't really, TV gets old and sitting around gets old, and all of a sudden then you're just stuck with you and your thoughts, and all of a sudden God will find you really quick in those moments. And that was the big breakdown. Like, as I got better and I could go out of my house and walk again, I found myself back at church pretty quick, and that was a big changing point in my life.
Wow. So yeah. I just did what you probably do once in a while too. I just sandbagged him. He didn't know this was coming, but I wanted to show you that everybody's got a testimony, and the right questions bear it out, and they bring it out. The story comes out. It's not a debate about so much God's reality. It's not a debate on the Godhead. It's not a debate on sin or grace. It's not a debate on heaven or hell. It was just a life story and God's impact into that story. That is the most powerful thing that we carry. And it's important that we have our testimony, be in touch with it, thought out. We get it. We ask ourselves the right questions, because at some time, your story matches up with somebody else's story. You know, when God brings us, guys, into the realm of other people, he's not matching up brains, he's matching up stories.
Right. That's very cool.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like, wow, you got something to bring to this story.
Yeah.
There's a connection here. There's dots that work here. And I've got you in their proximity for your story, not for your brain to be able to intellectually debate every question they got.
Yeah, two things come to mind for me. It's like Jesus' disciples, none of them were Bible scholars. None of them had gone to years of school. They were fishermen. They were simple men. But then they were the ones who carried, it was their story, their witness of Christ, basically to the world.
Yeah.
And then there's when Jesus healed a blind guy, and he was brought before the leaders of religious law. They're all asking him all these questions. How did this come to be? How did this man do this? Who did this to you? He's like, whoa, I don't know. Why don't you ask him? All I know is I couldn't see, and now I can see. It was his personal story.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that mattered. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say, it says in 1 Peter in chapter 3 to always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect, keeping a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander. And we were just talking about this in our children's online service on Sunday. For me, I have been through Celebrate Recovery, and through that I had worked on my testimony to share. But even before that, as a kid, I was so worried to share about God, because I felt like I just didn't know enough, and I didn't understand the Bible very well. But I could always tell stories of, the time that God saved my parents in a plane accident, and different things that God had done in my own life and helped me through these difficult situations. And I knew how I could talk about my own thing with ease, and people could relate to that.
Yeah.
Hold it. Okay, you caught my interest.
Yeah,
This is like one of those shows about the crashes or whatever.
Yeah, what happened?
What's this?
It was such a cool story, and a true story. My mom and dad were on their way to a conference. We lived in Tumbler Ridge, BC, and this conference, I think, was in Terrace. And a friend of theirs was a pilot, so he offered to fly them to and from. And on the way back, they were flying through the mountains, and the clouds came in and made it so the pilot couldn't see. And he just panicked, and he shut off his plane and called in a mayday. And it was him and my dad in the front, and his son and my mom in the back. And my mom just started calling out for Jesus, Jesus help us, and praying. And then through my dad, the Holy Spirit started talking to the pilot, turn on your plane, gave him exact instructions how to fly them out of the mountains, and they landed, and air traffic control, they came and got the pilot, of course, because you got to give an account, but it was a miraculous story. In the meantime, I was at home disobeying my parents and just when they get home, I'm going to get in so much trouble. God, I hope they don't come home tonight, please. And little did I know, that almost happened.
You're so callous.
Oh, I was such a little bud.
But there's story. That's power. The power of a story. The power of a story. I think sometimes we just make it so complex. When in essence, Christian faith is my story with Christ.
Right, exactly.
That's me and him.
Yeah.
And we also compare a lot to other people's stories too. It's like, well, my story's not as, it doesn't matter.
No.
God did this in your life. He was intentional about it. It's about you and God, not about what so-and-so did or how God did this through them. It's you. It's your story. It's important. It matters because it matters to him.
What we do know is Paul was a very learned gentleman. He had studied these Old Testament scriptures. He could have went that route.
Yes.
But here he chose to tell his testimony, and Luke chose to write about it in this book for a reason.
Exactly. Let me just kind of take the story here now. So Paul, he has been taken by the Romans, and he's asked for a chance to speak to the crowd that just moments before was wanting to kill him. So they say, yeah, okay. So they set it up, and he speaks from a point of safety to this crowd, and that was just trying to do away with him.
Yeah.
And in doing that, he doesn't take on any kind of theological debate with them. He tells his story right from the beginning, his training, his calling, his finding Jesus miraculously, and then how Jesus sent him out to take the gospel, and in fact, finally, to take the gospel to the Gentiles. And that moment, the crowd kicks in again, and they say, away with him, this guy's bad, do him in. I mean, so they went back into their mode. But maybe what Paul was doing, guys, if you ever think about it, you know, if you have people that, you know, you might die. Well, what's the last thing you want to leave with people?
Yeah.
What did God do in my life?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a debate about your theological little points. I don't want to have a does God exist debate with you. I want to tell you my story.
Yeah.
I want to leave you with my story. And by the way, that's what you do leave people with, right?
Absolutely.
We leave people with our stories.
Yes.
And it's either the Jesus story or we've kind of ignored that story. And that's too bad, because God matches up stories. There are people in our lives right now, what they need is your story. They don't need all the answers.
Yeah,
They need Jesus.
that's right.
Yeah, the book of Revelations, it says, we will overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. There's absolute power in that. It's the most powerful thing I think a person can have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If you can't relate it to your own life, then I don't know. Like the Bible is, of course, powerful, and of course we always use it. But like when you can show the things that have happened to you and how it applies is a whole different perspective, right? Like,
And how can someone debate that with you? How can
Yeah.
someone say, no, that didn't happen to you?
God didn't do
No,
that in your life.
exactly.
It's irrefutable. In the court of law, they ask for people's testimonies. If a crime happens, and you're a witness to it, they bring you in and hear your testimony. The world recognizes a testimony as powerful. And so in our own lives, we need to be ready to share that.
And that's where verse 15 matches up with what you guys are saying here, where it says, you will be his witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. This is Paul telling them his story.
Yeah.
And he's saying, this is what God told me I would be doing. I'm going to be a witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. Well, that's the beginning of your testimony. What have I seen? What have I heard? And what have I seen in my life?
Yeah.
What have I heard? What has helped? What has he brought? These are the things that you have to bring into your life and quit trying to, can I say this? Escape because you think you don't have all the answers.
Yes.
Maybe that's just an escape.
Yeah.
Tell your story. Share your story. Put Jesus front and center once in a while. You'd be amazed how people respond to that.
Yeah.
Many will respond to it because God has put them there as their story and yours matching up. You'll never know until you bring yours. When I hear other people's story and they start telling me their story, and there's a match point in mine, that is like an invitation to the most wonderful time to share.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, I get that. And then I bring in my story, but it's got Jesus in it.
Yeah.
That's what they need in their story.
Totally.
Right? Simple,
Yeah. Absolutely. I think so.
but beautiful.
Beautiful.
So be simple. Bring Jesus' stories, your story, into your world. Do it. You're going to find God do some remarkable things. You have matches waiting. They're waiting. Enjoy the next segment.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, it's free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I
Tonight we learned about the power of story. We're all living one. It's going to have ups, downs, all arounds. It's going to have ugly, bad, and good. It's got all of it. The power of it isn't found in any one part of it. It's found in all of it. And God uses it because your whole story connects with other people's stories. And He wants you to be living out your story and bringing your story into the connecting points with other people. I want to encourage you to get comfortable with your story and begin to share it with others. These people are not there by accident. And it's not an intellectual connection around faith. No, it's a story connection around faith. We've all lived very similar things. We all have the ups and downs. We all got that. That's why we love each other's story. That's why we like to hear stories, because we have that relatability and because it helps us. It helps us. Be a helper and help with the most powerful tool you got, your story, and your story with Jesus. That's your testimony. Jesus in my life. Here's my story. You'll find God will use it. So why don't we just pray quickly on this at the end? Just say, God, use my story. You've done such incredible things in my life. I'm so thankful that through the good, the bad, the ugly, you've been there. You've done good things. Use it, God. I want to give you my story. It's your story in me, but I'm giving it back to you. I surrender it. And I ask for your blessing upon it. And give me confidence and courage to share it so that others can be helped and you can do a great work in their life too. In your name I pray. Amen. Good night.